Hello, everybody. I think I am live. It always takes a little bit to log on here, but it looks like we are good to go. I am really excited to be here with you. Just hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Mona, thanks for joining us. Once you jump on live with us, let us know where you are coming in from. Let us know how you are doing. We are excited to have you here today, so welcome. I just want to do a check-in quick, like, how is everybody doing? How was your holiday? What's going on? What has been going well for you? Let us know your updates in the comments. So we are really excited. This is our fourth video. We are going to talk about the lovely luteal phase today. So I'm super duper excited to be here with you all. Again, if you are joining us, type in the chat, where are you joining us from? If you're catching the replay, let us know where you're watching from. We really want to be able to connect with all of you. Awesome, awesome people. This space has been so fun. I've had a blast in the group so far, and I'm excited to see what keeps growing and expanding and changing as we go through this. So welcome. I'm excited to have you here. Just a few little updates in case you have not seen it yet. Our group is a social learning group, and that means on the left-hand side of our page, there are things that are called units, and that's where we put worksheets, we log these videos, all of this different kind of material for you. So sometimes rather than trying to scroll through the page or trying to figure out exactly how something is named to search for it, you can just go over to the units page and find that pertinent information. So that would be a great option for you guys there if you are trying to find something. I likely stuck it in a unit, so go over and check that out, and that will be a great way to get started. So as we are getting started here today with this video, this deep dive on the luteal phase, again, I'd love to know where you're joining us from. I'm in Iowa, and we have had an unseasonably warm winter so far. I think it was 55 on Christmas Day, which I don't know has ever happened, so that was a little bit crazy for me. And I also would love to know, where are you at in your cycle this week? Where are you? What phase are you in, if you can identify that? And how have you been able to partner with your phase this week? So coincidentally, I am in the luteal phase this week as we are talking about the lovely luteal phase today during this little live video together. And it's been really interesting. I've been partnering a lot with my luteal phase by doing some wrap up at the end of the year, clearing some clutter, clearing up, wrapping up projects, and really getting ready for the next year, the next decade, all of those good pieces. So that is how I have been partnering with my luteal phase this week. I've also been giving myself a lot of rest over the holidays. So I would love to hear from all of you. Where are you at, if you know where you're at in your cycle, and how are you partnering with yourself this week? So let's go ahead and move right into our agreements. We always make some agreements together, kind of set this stage as we are working together to understand our cycles and ourselves better. So the first agreement that we're going to make together is the big red rule. Your body is the ultimate authority. It is more important than any expert, and the closer that you become with your body, the easier she will be to understand. You'll get to know what she's asking for, so that will be super helpful. Number two, in these videos, we're going to be going over baseline information, but because we're also different diets, stress, birth control, all these different variations, you may experience some really different things with your cycle than what we're talking about, and that is okay. There is no right or wrong. We're just kind of going to be teaching to the average, or what might be a little bit seen as normal in terms of some of the way that the medical community talks about it. But again, no big deal if you have something that feels a little bit different than what I'm talking about today. Feel free to ask questions, or as always, resort back to rule number one: your body is the ultimate authority. Number three, I do not know all of the answers, but I really will be committed to tell you when I don't know the answer and help to locate those resources for you so that we can get the most accurate information. And then number four, honesty is super important in this process when we are doing cycle reclamation work. There are not many spaces where we can talk about menstrual cycles, where we can ask all the questions. So this space really needs to be welcome for all questions. Nothing is off base, nothing is too weird. It is all okay here. So those are the pieces that we're going to be working with today. Those are the agreements that we are going to be working with. And I am really excited to be here with you all going through this process. We are going to have a fantastic time today. So I wanted to go over a little bit of a recap from last week. So in case you didn't get to see last week's video, we talked about the ovulation phase. And the ovulation phase can feel like a highly energetic and potent time for some people. And for other people, it can feel a little bit stressful because our bodies may be pushing us to be really extroverted. And if you're naturally a little bit more introverted, that may feel a little bit stressful. Hey, Brittany, thanks for joining us. Definitely let us know how you are partnering with your cycle this week and how you are doing. Thanks for being here. So yeah, it can feel like that potent time, but then again, it can feel a little bit overwhelming for some. And while the egg is only viable for 12 to 24 hours, depending on your level of fertile quality cervical mucus, your fertile window can last anywhere between 5 and 7 days. So if you missed that video, make sure you go on and check that out. The replay will be there for you. Hey, Sylvia, thanks for joining us. Hello. So that is what we talked about last week. So now we are going to really dive into the new material for this week. We are going to be talking again about the luteal phase. So I am going to share a screen with you. I've put together some different information here, and I am really excited to be able to share this with you today. Hey, Melinda, thanks for joining us. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know what phase you're in if you know, and how you can partner with it this week. And we are going to dive into the luteal phase. Also, let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Let me know where you watching in from. So today we are going to be talking about the luteal phase, and overall the intention of what we're going through is a reintroduction to our menstrual cycles. So in order to really reclaim that power, we need to understand our fluctuations and how we partner with it. And so really starting to have that deep knowledge is how we can begin to partner and make our lives better around our cycles. In today's discussion, we are going to talk about the lovely luteal phase. It is all about our inner autumn and what those things can feel like. I like to really refer to this as the lovely luteal phase. I like to do some real reclamation work here with this phase because the luteal phase is also known as the PMS phase. And it can be one of the more challenging phases that we go through, and it can be a little bit demonized. And so really in order to work with that part of ourselves better, I really like to work to reclaim how I even talk about it. So that's something that I hope you will join me with as well. So today we're going to go over a deep dive into the phase. And this is a great time to be analyzing. It's a great opportunity to look at the pieces of your life, see what's going well, maybe what's not going so well, and look how we can make changes. Then we want to look at some of those potential challenges that can be faced in this phase. And then we want to begin to see how do we partner with this part of our cycle. So that is what we are going to be going over today. So again, the agenda period, the way this all got started was my really interest in partnering with the 4 phases and understanding the 4 phases of my cycle. My background, my come from, I'm a holistic health and period coach, and I really work with women one-on-one to help them level up the different areas of their lives. And I am now also the CEO and co-founder of the Agenda Period. So that is the work we're really excited about, is instead of seeing these different parts and fluctuations that we go through as a burden, really starting to love the 4 phases of our cycle and being able to work with them for maximum impact and productivity. So again, if you haven't heard that before, that is why we are here. We are so excited. So a little reintroduction to our menstrual cycle. Over the last 3 weeks, we've gone over in depth the menstrual, follicular, and ovulation phase. And today we're going to talk about the luteal phase. So if you kind of look, it looks like it's about one of our longest phases. For most people it is. And that means, we spend the most of our time in this phase, which is not good or bad. But the issue becomes when, again, we have some demonization or negative thoughts and feelings about this cycle, and then we spend the most time there. That can feel a little bit frustrating. So this is kind of what that looks like overall. And again, if you missed any of the first 3 videos, definitely go back and check those out. So just checking in with the chat here, we have KM with us, Brittany is here, Evelyn is here from Phoenix, and she's in her ovulation phase around day 15. The luteal phase is challenging for me and sometimes start during ovulation or pre-PMS. Yeah, so we are definitely, thanks for sharing that, Evelyn. We are going to be talking about some of those things today. And I'm so excited to have you with us today. So again, this is kind of what that looks like over the typical cycle. And again, there are those 2 cycles that are going on, what is up in the ovaries and then what's up in the uterus. And post-ovulation, kind of the entire gamut is in that luteal phase. So it's pretty similar because the hormones that are going on are affecting those different organs. So this is kind of what is up post-ovulation. So again, what we had talked about a little bit with ovulation is that once the egg bursts through, a mature egg bursts out of the follicle, within 24 hours, what is created is a corpus luteum. So this is this little sac that is left behind after the egg pops out, and the corpus luteum becomes fully vascularized within 24 hours, meaning it connects to our body and creates its own blood supply. And then that corpus luteum begins to create the hormone progesterone. Progesterone can be really nice for helping us to feel calm, to help us support a pregnancy. So if then egg is fertilized and it makes its little journey down to the uterus, it can help really support that, that little being as it is starting its whole process. So the corpus luteum is super important, and that is what is created within 24 hours after we ovulate. So it's a pretty exciting thing, and it's one of the only structures in the human body that becomes vascularized so quickly. So it's pretty impressive. And then it begins to create that hormone progesterone. So if like we have talked about, this whole crux of this cycle over and over is the ovulation. So if ovulation does not happen, then there's no corpus luteum and there's no progesterone that's released. So sometimes if we do not ovulate, and there's no progesterone, that can cause some period problems later on with those breakthrough periods. And then again, with birth control, that can create some other issues because there is no corpus luteum if there's no ovulation. So it's an interesting zigzag, and all these pieces are kind of combined, but once in motion, create this easy to follow and understand cycle. So I'm really curious, what comes to your mind when you hear the word luteal? And I wonder if have you ever heard this word before? I had never really heard this word until, maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was really looking into the cycle, but I had never really heard of the word luteal, but I had heard about PMS. So the premenstrual cycle, the stuff that can happen before we menstruate. And I had heard a lot about that. So I am curious whether you'd heard of the luteal phase or if you've heard of PMS. What were some of the things that come to your mind when you hear those words? What are some of the stories that you've inherited or that you're bringing with you to this party? It's really interesting for us to get to take a look at our come from and our understanding and what we were taught, because that really has a big impact with how we interact with all of these pieces. So for me, I know that it was not a very positive word or phrase. I had really heard of it as a time of being crabby or accused of being crabby, or even jokes being tossed around. Oh, are you PMSing? What's your problem today? I don't understand your attitude, from pretty much everyone. I feel like it was in the cultural dialogue that I really grew up with, maybe from classmates, males or females, or even maybe parents, or, it was just really pretty common to accuse or assume a woman was in her PMS time if she wasn't happy or wasn't going along with the flow of things. So I'm curious, what about you? What have you all heard, or what are some of those pieces you're bringing with you to this conversation today? I'd love to hear them. Please type them in the comments so that we can have that discussion together. But for me, those are some of the things that I had heard. So Brittany said, I had never really heard of it other than PMS is where I felt tired, slow, sluggish, and very negative about PMSing. Yeah, Brittany, absolutely. Lots of negative connotations around PMSing. And, even so far as hearing certain things like, oh, she could never be or women can't be pregnant, they have PMS or they have periods or they have all of these different things, right? Like even so far as using it as reasons that we were irrational or super emotional. So it's really interesting to start to peel back these layers and kind of understand where these things are coming from. So if you have any other thoughts, let us know. What are some of those pieces that you internalized about either luteal phase or PMS as you have been growing up with a cycle? Love to hear what you have learned. So a look into the luteal phase. This is the phase where your body releases progesterone, again, that corpus luteum I was talking about, to support a possible pregnancy. During the luteal phase, you may feel tired and drained. You may feel a bit more sensitive or even doubting. You could have mood swings or pain when you're coming up towards the menstrual phase. But you also may have an easier time connecting to nature, going within, doing more repetitious tasks. So it can be a great time for tedious, detail-oriented things like decluttering, filing, and organizing pieces like that. So we like to look at this as the like that fall time energy, that autumn energy. So you can kind of understand some of the energetic things that may be going on in comparison to the season fall. That can be a great way to look at it. So overall, let's go over the different pieces of the luteal phase. So number of days, the luteal phase will last from 10 to 16 days, and it is typically the longest phase of the cycle. So in order for a pregnancy to be viable, it needs to last at least 10 to 11 days. And so if someone has a short luteal phase, that could be a potential reason for some fertility issues if that was something you were looking to understand. And it's really good to be tracking your cycle because ovulation, like we talked about, can shift based on stress, but then our luteal phase tends to be the same amount. And so if you are tracking your ovulation, you figure out that maybe your luteal phase is only 9 days long, that can be helpful information to go to a practitioner with and say, hey, I have a short luteal phase. What can we do to adjust that piece of my fertility? So that is what it is in terms of length. So checking in with Evelyn quick, I never heard about it until I started studying the moon phases. Then I realized our cycle is structured by the moon. When I say the word luteal, it actually is soothing and calming. It always feels like a little stick with the T, luteal. But now when I hear luteal, I think PMS. PMS doesn't make me happy, but I accept it as part of me and have the desire to work with it versus against it. Yeah. PMS can be just like such a loaded phrase. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I think, again, it's something that we all can work to reclaim. Being in this group, doing this kind of work for ourselves, we can really work to turn the tides on that phase and how we talk about it. So I am glad you're all here. So hey, Meg, hey, Sunny, we got lots of friends popping in with us. Let us know where you are watching from. We are doing a deep dive into the lovely luteal phase today. So in terms of moisture, the cervical mucus might be a little creamy during this phase, or you could also feel dry. So it likely will not be the extremely stretchy egg white mucus that we talked about during the ovulation phase, unless you are experiencing some cycle challenges, maybe some PCOS. There are a couple of conditions that make your cervical mucus very unpredictable, but typically it may be a little bit creamy or pretty dry during this phase of the cycle. Energy, again, imagine the fall time energy. We still can feel higher energy during menstruation, but we tend to be more inward and gathering inward. I found for myself, this can be some of the reasons I can feel a little pressed or resentful when people ask so much of me during this phase. Be full of energy, but it may be a little bit more inward or a little bit more critical. And so learning how to work with and re-challenge and cycle that energy is super important. Brittany is saying, it kind of makes sense now that I have some cramps in the middle of my cycle, perhaps because I've been on hormonal birth control, there was no ovulation, therefore no corpus luteum. Yes, Brittany, yes. So yeah, they're not having that soothing hormone of the progesterone without the ovulation. So great observation there. In terms of food, we always talk about listening to what our bodies are asking for, but you can get really curious about sugary foods and caffeine consumption, as these can have bigger adverse reactions in this phase. So if we're tending to feel our emotions a little bit more sharply than at other times. Caffeine can have a huge effect on anxiety in the body, as can sugar. And so if we're already having some mood fluctuations, really wanting to be intentional about the additional load that we're asking of our body, and wanting to make sure our blood sugar as level as possible, because that can really exacerbate those feelings that we're having. If we're already feeling a little bit more sensitive and tense, adding additional sugar and additional caffeine can really amplify the way they're experiencing. He's talking about having a lot of, yeah, so really maybe wanting to be at doing some blood sugar balancing, additional fats and proteins during this time to minimize those cravings. And again, because it can be a bit of an emotional time, maybe starting to look at what is the emotional ask underneath of the craving, because sometimes the craving isn't really for food. And so maybe is there some more care? Is there some more kindness? What are other ways that we can address some of those food cravings? And again, it could be those two pieces of it, right? So the actual food piece and the emotional piece as well. So kind of doing a combined approach, looking at both of those things there. Additionally, we're going to look at some challenges. So this is typically one of the most difficult phases for people to work with. It has a really bad rap, like we were talking about earlier, all the different things you all have heard about, the luteal phase. And it's also the longest phase. So when it is out of sync, it can really be difficult for us because we spend the most time here than any other phase, then directly followed by menstruation. And so when we feel really not like ourselves in this time, we're not like we're used to feeling, this can be really challenging. On the flip side, some people that we work with really note that this is their favorite time because they are a more introverted personality and they like the steady inwardness while still having the energetic abilities during this phase. So really check in with yourself and see what camp you land. For me, this is definitely historically been one of the most challenging phases because I'm very extroverted. And so this phase can be pretty difficult for me. So just overall going a little bit deeper into some of the challenges, this can really, again, be the most misunderstood and mismanaged phase. It can be totally undervalued because we really can have a big boost of energy, which is fantastic, but sometimes it can feel critical or nitpicky if not properly, guided. And so sometimes then we feel bad that we have so much energy and we're kind of nitpicking at things. It can, maybe lower our motivation or maybe not. This phase really, again, depends a lot on some of your personality traits as well. This can feel like a shadow side. Maybe you've had some feelings that you have been ignoring, some wounds, some old patterns, and often these will come up again and again to the surface. We like to talk about that our BS meter really gets lower during the luteal phase. So if something is not sitting well with you, it will likely come up again and again and again and again in this phase until we give it some attention. So for example, it's pretty common to have similar intimate partner fights every single month during the luteal phase. I know that's definitely true for me, that my husband and I tend to have similar patterns of disagreements during the luteal phase. It's because other times of my cycle, maybe I have more tolerance for it than during the luteal phase. And if it's something that feels unresolved, it will keep coming back up and asking for my attention. So in that way, this can be a really great benefit for us. Maybe we don't want to be reactive in this energy, but if we're noticing this pattern again and again, it can really be an opportunity for us to pause and look for some new solutions. So like that's, again, some of those benefits of this. And on the other side, we may feel like we're kind of losing ourselves. We may feel like we're not belonging in our bodies like we typically do. And we can really have some of those fragile or sensitive pieces really shine through in this phase. So the luteal phase can really be a mixed bag. For me, I experience it as sometimes I feel like it is some boss lady energy. It's like I don't feel bad at all, but it's like, get out of my way. This is what I think. This is what we should do. And then I may feel really sad or misunderstood, or like things are not going well in a project. And so understanding and by tracking our patterns can be a great way to really, really work with this energy. So Evelyn said, I picked up on the caffeine and sugar thing during this phase. It also seems to affect me in the follicular phase, but the effect is long-term. Felt it in my ovulation and or luteal. Yeah, so honestly, long-term caffeine is not really great for menstruating people's bodies. It can be pretty hard to process, as can sugar. These can mess with our stress response, mess with our blood sugar levels. So maybe something just to consider minimizing over time to see how it impacts your cycle and impacts the flow that you have throughout your cycle. So I wanted to look a little bit about what is normal versus what is not so normal. So there can be some discomfort and pain when we are not sure how to work with this energy. And that, can be a little bit common and a little bit normal. But when this becomes extreme, intense, some people may even talk about PMDD. Those are symptoms that can be signs of a hormonal imbalance, and there can be ways to reach out to a practitioner or really have some different ways to work with this phase. So when these symptoms become very extreme, it really is not so normal. So that is something that we really want to get curious about and look at. And as always, your loving awareness really can be the key to partnering with this phase and making it better. When we bring our consciousness to any part of our life, it increasingly gets better. So if you are finding some challenges for yourself in this phase, I invite you to bring your loving kindness to it. So I'm curious, are there any questions that are coming up so far? Please put them in the chat. We'd love to create this discussion together. And check out my cool mug. Isn't this so fun? Ooh, that water, delish. Okay, so what about the luteal phase and birth control? So again, Evelyn, but I like my coffee. Oh, I know, I love coffee and I had to give it up. I give it up completely, and it's been 3 months and I'm honestly feeling much better in the luteal phase. And because the holiday was last week, I gave myself a few cups of coffee and it did not go well. I really felt it very intensely. I'm in the luteal phase and I just had 1 cup and it really did not sit well. So it may be something worth looking at in the long run. I have switched to green tea and I'm finding that to be much more compatible with my cycle, Evelyn. So just some food for thought there. So the luteal phase and the birth control pill. So again, when we are on the pill, if you are on the pill that stops ovulation, when we are not ovulating, then we are not having the progesterone. And we can experience a heightened sense of the worst aspects of this phase because there's not that natural progesterone, which has some of that calming effects. And really we're kind of dealing with, there's no natural progesterone or estrogen. It's all kind of being fed in through the pill and they are not our normal hormones. So it can really definitely impact the way that we feel in the luteal phase when we are on birth control. So those are some thoughts about that. Awesome. So now we are just going to look a little bit at what kind of tasks may go with this phase. So again, each phase of the cycle has different strengths and skill sets. And when we really start to take advantage of that and harvest the benefits of that phase, everything changes and life gets a lot better. And so some of the tasks that line up well with this phase would be accounting, admin, decluttering, organizing different things in our lives, and really having some of those detail-oriented tasks. So I love going through my taxes at this time. I love being able to highlight and itemize and do different pieces like that during the luteal phase. But really being able to lean into and learn with this phase of the cycle is fantastic. So those would be some of the tasks that we would recommend to try out during this phase. So just wanted to end with this beautiful quote that I think is awesome. She remembered who she was and then the game changed. So when we can remember who we are, we can remember the amazing impacts of the luteal phase and how we can really use that to our advantage. We can use it to our advantage that we don't have the BS. We have a lower tolerance for other people's BS. We can really stand up for ourselves, learn to do some of that deep advocating work. There are a lot of really fantastic benefits with the luteal phase. And so with our time and attention, we can really reclaim this phase. So I know it's just typically tends to be one of the most challenging phases that we see that people have. So that's something that I always want to remind is that we can make this a lot different. We can really change the way we interact and impact with this phase. So I would love to answer any other questions that are coming up for you guys. And I would also love everyone watching, whether live or the replay, to share what is your aha or takeaway? What is something that surprised you or that felt new to you about the luteal phase? What is something that you maybe didn't hear before or that you are excited to try out? And any questions. So really either of those two things, either an aha or a question, and I would love to answer those for you. Because we are here to join in community together and to really increase our knowledge, our cycle knowledge, and use that to our advantage. Like, we are coming up against a new year, lots of exciting stuff. So it is a great time to reclaim your cycle and to get the most support possible around it. So if anyone has got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And this is our last video in this first cycle of the four little video series. So we are going to be coming up with some amazing other topics. We are going to be coming to you with more cycle knowledge as we go into next year. So I'm super duper excited to be working with you all and to be exploring this journey together. Brittany says, I'm going to shoot for decreasing my caffeine and sugar consumption in this phase. Love it. I would love for you to track that, Brittany, and let us know how it makes you feel. What are you experiencing? And how do you notice how this phase feels? Does it feel any different to you? So definitely check back in with us on that. I think that is fantastic. I would love to hear any other ahas that people are coming up with. And yeah, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us share this information. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks so much, everybody.